Tammy Cole was a tomboy through and through.
She was into racing and NASCAR.
Vance Evans was an auto worker that loved a good time.
Vance was the party. Everybody loved Vance.
Tammy was no exception.
She was in love with Vance.
But Vance didn't love Tammy.
It was just physical.
She was a booty call, and that was it.
And when the calls inevitably ended, Tammy had trouble letting go.
If she couldn't have him, nobody could.
The psycho bitch from Illinois was his name for her.
He couldn't get rid of her.
But did she get rid of him?
You know, love does bad things.
I don't know if he's alive. There's blood all over.
Inside of his house at the time, and how he couldn't get rid of her.
He started going on about, there's a psycho bitch from Illinois in my house.
Just who the psycho bitch was, Mary didn't know. She'd only been dating Vance since December, shortly after he had moved home to Wisconsin.
Because I had no clue. And he went on to say a little bit about her and stuff, and I told him, I said, if you can't get her out, call the cops.
That wasn't necessary, according to Vance.
And he just says, I'll take care of it, Mary, and I'll call you right back.
Mary's phone rang a few minutes later. It was Vance's number, but he hung up when she answered. When she called back, it wasn't his voice on the other end of the line.
The person that made that call told Mary McLean essentially to leave her boyfriend alone.
Or else, according to the mystery woman on the phone.
The conversation essentially ended with her saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to shoot you dead. 5,000 things were going through my mind. Something was wrong because she shouldn't have had the phone.
Once the mystery woman hung up, Mary spent a frantic hour trying to contact Vance. She called his cell, his home phone, even the bar, but there was no answer. Finally, after midnight, she got in her car.
She drove to Toma and to see what was going on and make sure everything was okay.
And she'd barely gotten out of her car before realizing that things weren't okay.
I didn't even get near the house and you could smell gas.
Upon arriving there, smelled a distinct odor of natural gas coming from Vance's house.
Alarmed, Mary rushed inside.
There was a body laying in the middle of the living room floor. I knew it was Vance just from the figure.
And she feared the worst.
I did go up to Vance and I was checking a pulse or anything I could try and find on him. Needless to say, there was nothing. Nice big pool of blood around his head.
Vance was shot in the back, lower back of his skull.
And the woman who had been there that night was Vance's former girlfriend, Tammy Cole. But for now, she was long gone. Born in 1956, Vance had grown up in Toma, Wisconsin, the youngest of 6 children.
He grew up on the family farm out there, and he was spoiled.
He was always getting into, some sort of mischief.
Vance married young, and in his early 20s, he moved away from Toma.
There wasn't very much work up there.
We came to Illinois, and he got a job at Chrysler.
And when he wasn't working at the assembly plant outside Chicago, Vance did the same things he had enjoyed growing up in Toma.
He liked to hunt, he liked to fish.
He really liked cars. He was really into NASCAR.
Vance and his first wife had a son, but the marriage didn't last.
When I was 3 years old, I'd have to see him on the weekends because him and my mom, split up.
He remarried, and they bought a house in Poplar Grove.
But Vance always dreamed of moving back to Wisconsin.
He was born and raised in Toma. He always wanted to go back.
In fact, Vance started making plans to return to Toma as early as 1995, when he bought half interest in the Sportsman's Bar.
What Vance did was he partnered with his mother-in-law at the time, and the deal was she was going to run the bar until he finished at Chrysler. Then he would go up there and run the bar.
He wanted to run the bar as part of a retirement, something to do, something to keep him busy.
Until then, Vance drove up from Illinois on most weekends and holidays to help out.
It was always a comfortable place to go, have fun, play pool, play jukebox, darts. It was a fun place to be.
Although spending time at the bar seemed to have an impact on his driving record.
Vance probably had about 3 drunk driving convictions.
After Vance divorced for a second time, he met Tammy, who was more than happy to spend her time with him.
Everyone loved Vance. It was hard not to. He was fun. He made people smile. He made people laugh. He was like everybody's favorite.
Soon, Tammy had started hanging out at Vance's, helping out around the garage.
Tammy Cole liked cars. My dad loved cars. That's the little thing they had.
And by 2007, Tammy and Vance were an item of sorts.
Well, she was kind of regular. I don't know about a girlfriend, but he was seeing her, but he was seeing other people at the same time.
He was helping her and she was helping him, and the sex on the side was just extra.
In my mind, she was a booty call and that was it.
That was apparently how Vance approached the relationship.
He never said, "Hey, Travis, I'm dating Tammy Cole."
He never brought her up here. He never talked about her. Nobody in the family had any idea that she even existed because she just wasn't important to Vance.
But how important was Vance to Tammy?
She was in love with Vance.
She did things for Vance, and bought him gifts, put tile in his floor. I mean, he let her do stuff because, that was, why would he say no?
In fact, for the next 2 years, there was really only one thing that Vance said no to.
Vance made it very clear that he wasn't in love with her.
And when he retired from Chrysler in June of 2009 and put his house on the market in order to move back home to Wisconsin, Vance made it crystal clear.
Tammy wanted to go to Toma with Vance. Vance said no, that this relationship's not going anywhere.
But did Tammy get the message?
Vance would always say that she was like a virus and she wouldn't go away. She would be at his house at times that he had no clue that she would be there. No inclination, and phone would ring nonstop.
Vance, meanwhile, did his best to move on. Although the house in Poplar Grove was still on the market, by the fall of 2009, he'd returned to Toma for good.
He was up there pretty much full-time.
In December of 2009, Vance also began dating Mary McLean, a 49-year-old nurse who lived in a town near Toma.
We've known each other for years. I honestly don't remember when we met, but it was in Toma, probably at Sportsman's Bar. We got along, we did everything together.
Thinks he finally found the one. It was that this was going to be the love of his life.
And the relationship was quickly turning serious.
We weren't per se playing house yet together, living together, anything. We were very close. We had a lot of plans made.
And Tammy wasn't a factor in any of those plans. After 5 months of dating Vance, Mary didn't even know she existed. Because around the time Mary and Vance started dating, Tammy's job had taken her out of town.
She had been in the state of Virginia working for a couple of months.
Tammy was back in April, however, and it wasn't long before Vance's phone started ringing in vain.
He wasn't answering any of her phone calls. He was completely blowing her off. He was done with her.
But was Tammy Cole done with Vance? Coming up, Mary finds Vance dead.
There's blood all over.
And suspicion turns to his jealous ex-girlfriend.
It was, who's the psycho bitch from Illinois?
Toma, Wisconsin, April 27th, 2010. It was 1:24 that morning when Mary McLean called Monroe County 911 and reported that she just found her boyfriend, 53-year-old Vance Evans, collapsed on his living room floor.
I don't know if he's alive. There's blood all over.
Okay, do you know what happened, or?
I have no clue. I just got to town.
All Mary knew was that Vance had been having trouble with a woman who had shown up unannounced at his house. Apparently, a jealous ex-girlfriend.
I got a call earlier. There's a psycho bitch.
I told her to get the hell out, and she just keeps coming back. I've been trying to get rid of the bitch, and she just won't leave me alone. And that was his direct words on the phone.
Worried, Mary had made the 30-minute drive to Vance's to make sure everything was okay.
I was thinking, he's been drinking. Please don't hit her.
But when Mary arrived, what she found had been far worse.
There's blood coming out of his head. He's on his floor.
And that wasn't the only emergency either.
Mary, when she pulled up in front of the house, she could smell the natural gas. She could smell it.
So I went into the kitchen part and we ran up to the stove right away because it was coming from that corner of the house. I turned the knobs, and to be honest with you, I don't know if I turned them on or off. I know I switched the knobs and whatever, but you could still hear the gas.
Within minutes, emergency vehicles were on their way.
Call advised that there's a male subject laying on the ground, unknown if alive, blood all over the place, and gas pouring out all over the place.
When the first officers arrived on the scene, it was obvious that they had an extremely dangerous situation on their hands.
The smell of gas when the law enforcement officers arrived there was really overwhelming, and it was out into the neighborhood, indicating there was a large gas leak somewhere.
The police kept Mary and curious neighbors back, while the fire department turned off the gas and used fans to start clearing it from the house.
I remember yelling at them, get somebody in there to help him. And, ma'am, we can't go in the house, there's too much gas.
Finally, once the gas was cleared, EMTs went inside to check on Vance.
One guy came out later and he told me that Vance was dead.
Vance Evans is found sort of in the middle of the living room, facing toward the front door.
He had been shot once in the back of the head.
That bullet traveled upward and to the right, exiting from his right forehead.
We ultimately located a bullet in the door jamb above the front entry door.
But who had shot him? At the scene, the investigators initially turned their attention to Mary.
There were certainly concerns that she may have been involved in it.
They went through my car from top to bottom. I mean, dumped my purse, did everything. And I can't say I blame them.
Mary wasn't angered by the search. Instead, she did everything she could to cooperate with the investigation, telling the detectives all about the strange phone conversation she'd had with Vance earlier that evening.
He was talking about this woman that was inside of his house at the time.
The psycho bitch from Illinois was his only name for her. That was the only name I had.
Whoever the woman was, she had clearly been a problem.
He couldn't get rid of her.
In fact, Mary said she had even spoken to the mystery woman. According to her, the woman had answered Vance's phone earlier that night.
There's a gal on the other end of it. She said a few things, something about you got to stay away from Vance.
Then, the mystery woman had threatened her, according to Mary.
Her straight words was, "You're done f***ing my boyfriend. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to shoot you dead."
Had the same woman also shot Vance? At that point, the investigators couldn't know for sure, but finding her was definitely a priority.
Obviously, we wanted to know who the female from Illinois was that was at the residence.
Hoping to learn the woman's identity, the investigators began the grim task of contacting Vance's family and friends. Meanwhile, CSI techs from the state's Division of Criminal Investigation arrived and began to process the crime scene.
When we have an incident of this magnitude, we do call on the Department of Justice and the Division of Criminal Investigation to assist us with the crime analysis.
In the kitchen, the crime scene investigators discovered what they suspected was the murder weapon.
The revolver was located in the kitchen in a garbage can, a metal garbage can.
They also found evidence that could provide clues to the killer's identity.
They also located in the kitchen sink a overturned beer can and a pair of black type gloves.
The investigators also recovered Vance's cell phone. Dusted for prints at the scene, it produced another potential clue.
A fingerprint was located on Vance Evans' cell phone that was in the residence. That was significant to the investigation from the standpoint of the phone call that Mary McLean received from a female basically threatening her.
Why had Vance's killer been so careless? Considering the gas that had initially prevented them from entering the house, the authorities had a pretty good guess.
They plotted to burn the house to cover the evidence.
In the kitchen, the investigators found the source of the gas leak.
There was a copper tubing that led from the gas connection pipe to the back of the stove. That was cracked. It was like kinked and cracked, and gas spewed from it.
Upstairs, the investigators found what they believe had been the intended source of ignition.
The officers located in the upstairs bedroom of Vance's house a candle, a lit candle in a small glass bowl.
I believe that candle was lit so the house would fill up with gas and at some point would ignite.
Fortunately, there hadn't been enough gas on the second floor to ignite.
It was a really, really old house and very drafty.
Once the crime scene investigators finished, the coroner removed Vance's body for autopsy. The gun and the bullet from the door jamb were sent off for a ballistics comparison, while the gloves, beer can, and fingerprint from Vance's phone were taken to the crime lab for analysis.
They had quite a lot of evidence. Had the house burned down, it would have been a different story.
The investigators also had a suspect, even if they didn't know her name.
At that point, it was, who's the psycho bitch from Illinois?
Unfortunately, none of Vance's Wisconsin friends and family that the investigators contacted had any idea who the woman could be.
I couldn't imagine who would do something like that to Vance.
I personally don't know anybody that did not like him.
Perhaps one of Vance's old friends in Illinois would know.
We got a hold of, I believe it was Neil Bender, Vance Evans's good friend in Illinois.
The police department called me at 10 minutes after 4, and I was at work. I just told him, I said, hey, this ain't funny.
Neil was shocked to learn why the police were calling him, but he could offer little help.
I tried to rack my brain on it, and Vance might have been dating somebody from Rockford. I don't know.
The investigators kept trying, as did Vance's niece, Kelly Stiles.
I started calling people, who would he have described as the psycho bitch from Illinois?
Phone call after phone call failed to produce an answer. But finally, one of Vance's friends was able to give the mysterious woman a name.
The first thing out of his mouth was, well, that's Tammy Cole.
Coming up, the investigators finally catch up to Tammy.
She kept repeating accident and a gun.
But will anyone believe her?
I think she just was mad.
By mid-morning, April 27, 2010, it had been less than 24 hours since 53-year-old Vance Evans had been shot dead in his Tomah, Wisconsin home. The police believed he had been killed by the woman he had described to his girlfriend, Mary McLean, as a psycho bitch from Illinois.
Mary McLean was given information from Vance Evans that there was a woman from Illinois that showed up at his house.
And not long after Mary had found Vance's dead body sprawled on his living room floor, Vance's family had tentatively identified the alleged shooter as his ex-girlfriend, 46-year-old Tammy Cole.
People that knew Vance and knew her knew immediately that she was who he would have called the psycho bitch from Illinois.
However, just as Vance's family came up with Tammy's name, police received a call from an unexpected source with what appeared to be confirmation that Tammy had been involved in the shooting. The information came courtesy of an Illinois attorney who contacted the Wisconsin investigators that Tuesday morning.
He indicated to me that he represented Tammy Cole and that she was involved in an accidental discharge of a firearm in Tomah the previous night.
Had Tammy accidentally shot Vance in the back of the head? The investigators were dubious, to say the least.
My first instinct related to that issue is that a normal person, in my mind, that an accident occurs and someone's injured or someone's killed, they're going to notify the police or emergency personnel, at that time, and they're going to remain at the scene.
She never called 911, never reported this to anyone, never summoned help for Vance.
Instead of calling for help after the shooting, Tammy had apparently tried to set the house on fire.
evidence at the scene that suggested this was not an accident.
Clearly, Tammy had some explaining to do, but she wasn't ready to talk to investigators just yet.
They weren't very receptive to meeting with me to further talk to me about the reported accident.
Faced with Tammy's refusal to talk, the investigators turned to the only other person who'd been present at the shooting, Vance. At his autopsy on April 28th, the medical examiner found no evidence to confirm Tammy's claim that Vance's death had been an accident.
The opinion of the pathologist was that this was a execution-style gunshot to the head.
2 days later, on April 30th, the Wisconsin investigators drove to Tammy Cole's house in Big Rock, Illinois. However, they didn't have a warrant for her arrest yet.
In conjunction with the Illinois State Police and the prosecuting attorney's office down in Illinois, we have had to obtain a search warrant for her residence.
Inside, detectives discovered one important piece of evidence: a gun owner's identification card issued to Tammy Cole by the state of Illinois. But they didn't find any guns. Was it possible the gun at the crime scene was registered to her? While in Illinois, the investigators also spoke to Tammy's sister, Vance's former neighbor.
There was good information from Tammy Cole's sister that also described at least the events as Tammy Cole related them to her.
Her sister told the investigators that Tammy had called her just after the shooting.
Eventually, her sister got the story from her.
Although, according to her sister, the story Tammy told her was decidedly short on details.
She was distraught, she was upset, she was not making a lot of sense.
She kept repeating things like an accident and a gun.
And since Tammy wasn't talking to the investigators, it was up to them to reconstruct just how Vance had died.
I have basically no information from Tammy Cole.
Proving Tammy had been in the house that night wasn't hard, however.
Tammy Cole left behind several key pieces of evidence.
And during the month of May, the state crime lab painstakingly processed each one, starting with the fingerprint from Vance's phone.
That turned out to be the fingerprint of Tammy Cole.
The crime lab also found traces of Tammy's DNA.
There was a pair of gloves in the kitchen sink, ultimately, that was determined to have DNA from Tammy Cole.
They also were able to develop DNA from the lip of the beer can. That ultimately was processed by the crime lab and turned out to be Tammy Cole's DNA.
That DNA on the can and gloves put Tammy at the scene, but police couldn't link the gun to Tammy. Though ballistics had matched the gun to the bullet CSI techs had pried out of the door jamb.
The firearm turned out to be the gun that was used to kill Vance.
But there was one thing the ballistics experts hadn't been able to do.
The Wisconsin Crime Lab tested that gun and drop tested it as well, and it didn't accidentally discharge.
The investigators also pulled Tammy's cell phone records.
The cell phone data put her in Tomah, Wisconsin during the time period that Vance Evans could have been killed.
We had an analyst track her cell phone from the time it left her home in Illinois.
Based on the records, the investigators believed that Tammy had spent the entire drive up trying desperately to reach Vance.
All along the way, she kept calling his cell phone.
She was blowing up his call waiting. There was so many calls from her phone to Vance's phone. I think she just was mad.
Even more interesting was a text that she had sent Vance at 9:53 on the night of the shooting. It was exactly the same moment he was outside the house, on the phone with Mary, and complaining about the psycho bitch from Illinois.
One of the last texts that he received that night were the words, "Can you come and say goodbye?"
However, that final text to Vance wasn't the last time Tammy had used her phone that night.
Her cell phone was being used all the way back down to Big Rock.
Investigators already knew that Tammy hadn't called 911 and that she had called her sister, who described Tammy as hysterical and distraught in the aftermath of the shooting. But Tammy's other calls that night seemed to paint a very different picture.
She made several calls from her cell phone to a bill-paying site.
For investigators, it only underscored that Tammy wasn't distraught, and the shooting wasn't an accident. By June 9th, with the cell phone records, Mary's testimony, and the forensic evidence from the scene, the Monroe County authorities had more than enough for an arrest warrant.
She was charged with the first-degree intentional homicide and also charged with an attempted arson.
Notified of the warrant, Tammy turned herself into police in Illinois.
She was held initially in a facility in Illinois and then transferred to the Monroe County Sheriff's Department.
She waived extradition and voluntarily allowed herself to be transported back here.
Booked into the Monroe County Jail and her bail set at $1 million. She would spend the next 10 months behind bars, awaiting trial.
I felt very comfortable that we had a solid case.
But there was still one wild card in play.
I never really did get an opportunity to sit down with Tammy Cole and hear her version.
Coming up, Tammy finally gives her account of the night Vance Evans died.
She was sad. She portrayed that.
Because according to Tammy, she hadn't been trying to kill Vance. She had been trying to save him. On March 21st, 2011, Tammy Cole went on trial for murder in the Monroe County Courthouse in Sparta, Wisconsin. The 47-year-old had admitted to shooting her former lover, a 53-year-old retired auto worker named Vance Evans.
She says that it accidentally went off, and that's how he ended up dead.
The authorities thought otherwise, however. Just 5 months before the shooting in April of 2010, Vance had ended his relationship with Tammy and started seeing another woman.
Ultimately, it had a lot to do with Vance Evans' relationship with Mary McLean and her jealousy and her perception of her relationship with Vance Evans.
The authorities believed Tammy, jealous that Vance was moving on without her, had killed him and tried to burn down his house.
The candle upstairs in the residence was lit for the purpose of either blowing up or burning the house once the gas concentration got to the fire upstairs.
Arrested in June of 2010, Tammy had spent the last 10 months in jail.
She was subject to, I think it was $1 million cash bond. She did not post that.
And the time she had spent incarcerated had taken a considerable toll on the woman at the defense table.
She looked terrible. I mean, it looked like she had aged a lot.
In fact, Tammy had aged so much that it was hard for Vance's friends and family to believe he'd ever had a relationship with her.
My uncle has always liked good-looking women all his life. I've never known him to date anybody like her.
But Tammy and Vance had been in a relationship, one that Tammy desperately wanted to continue, according to the prosecutor's opening statement.
Tammy Cole was more in love with Vance than Vance was with her. And at one point, it was my understanding that Vance wanted to break off that relationship and that Tammy Cole did not want that to happen.
Instead, the prosecutors claimed that Tammy had spent the first few months of 2010 in denial, acting as if their relationship was still ongoing.
Tammy Cole went as far as stalking my father because she was so much in love with him.
But eventually, the realization that Vance was seeing someone else had finally sunk in. But that didn't mean Tammy had accepted it, according to the prosecution.
The prosecution contended that was what spurred her to shoot Mr. Evans.
If she couldn't have him, nobody could.
In the defense's open, Tammy's attorneys described a very different situation. They maintained that Vance hadn't broken up with Tammy or told her that he was dating someone else.
She believed that they were in an exclusive relationship with each other.
And while they didn't deny that Tammy had shot Vance, her attorneys argued that what happened that night was an accident.
She maintained throughout that this was an accidental discharge.
But there were several problems with Tammy's claim, according to the prosecutors. When they started presenting their case, one of their first witnesses was a forensic scientist from the state crime lab.
The Wisconsin crime lab determined that it's not the sort of gun that could accidentally discharge.
The prosecutors also put an arson investigator on the stand to describe how Tammy had allegedly tried to set the house on fire.
It certainly appeared that she was trying to cover up what had happened, and that certainly made her look guilty.
Finally, a representative from the cell phone provider testified that while Tammy hadn't called 911 after the shooting, she had used her phone.
She was paying her bills on her cell phone.
When it was the defense's turn, Tammy's attorneys put her on the stand to finally explain what happened in her own words.
In some respects, she's a sympathetic defendant in that she was sad. She portrayed that. She cried throughout the trial.
Tammy testified that on the day of the shooting, she had paid a surprise visit to Vance, partly because she was worried about him.
She talked about a pending criminal case that he had in Illinois that he was dealing with.
Since it wasn't his first DUI charge, Vance would have faced some stiff penalties if convicted.
He was looking at a potential period of incarceration, probably in jail or prison in Illinois.
According to Tammy, the possibility had left Vance extremely depressed.
Tammy Cole testified that she believed that Vance Evans was suicidal.
And soon after walking into the house that evening, Tammy said she had become even more worried about Vance.
She claims there was a firearm on, I believe it was an end table in the living room.
Tammy told the jury she had grabbed the gun while Vance wasn't looking.
Her intent, according to her, was to hide this firearm.
Her story was that she was going to take it into the kitchen to hide it from Vance.
But Tammy claimed that as she had slipped past Vance, the gun hidden behind her back, he had suddenly put his arms around her.
Tammy Cole claimed that it was more like a bear hug. She was put in this position and squeezed by Vance.
And the gun accidentally went off in her hand and shot him.
Tammy told the jury that she was horrified when she realized the man she loved was dead.
Tammy Cole said that after the gun had accidentally discharged and killed Vance, she wanted to commit suicide.
That's why she said that she kicked out the gas line.
She testified that she was waiting for the gas to build up and suffocate her. When she realized that wasn't happening, she decided to get up and leave.
According to Tammy, she stumbled out of the house in a daze, climbed into her pickup, and just started driving.
From the testimony that Tammy gave at trial was she doesn't know what she did until she woke up in Janesville, which is a good 2.5 hours from Toma.
A suicidal boyfriend, an accidental shooting, and a blackout afterwards. Out in the courtroom, it all sounded awfully convenient.
It just sort of stretches credibility.
And the prosecutors were quick to capitalize on that disbelief. They began their cross-examination by asking Tammy if she could recreate the fatal hug.
There was a demonstration done in the courtroom with an individual acting as Vance Evans.
It was very obvious that the position that she would have had to have been in order to shoot Vance in the manner that he was not possible.
There's no way that gun lined up to the back of the head like that.
Hoping to cast further doubt, the prosecutor asked Tammy about the candle that had been left burning in the upstairs bedroom.
Her explanation for that candle was that she and Vance were planning to go upstairs and be intimate later, and that the candle had been lit for sort of an ambiance.
Finally, the prosecutor asked Tammy why her cell phone records showed her calling a bill-paying site while she drove back to Illinois.
She claimed to not remember making those calls, paying her bills.
She did not try to justify what she had done. She kept saying it was an accident.
Throughout her 5 hours on the stand, Tammy not only stuck to her story, she appeared sorry that Vance was dead.
She cried throughout the trial, although I didn't see any tears. I think that they were dealing with a sad individual who maintained that this was an accident.
She cried through most of it. In some sick way, I think that she must have loved him, but, it was completely one way. And I think she just came across as a psycho.
Coming up, Tammy awaits the jury's decision.
I think she was pretty much stone-faced.
But will it be the one Vance's friends and family hope for?
I don't ever want to see her outside of that jail.
On March 25, 2011, Tammy Cole sat in a Monroe County, Wisconsin courtroom, awaiting the verdict in her murder trial. The 47-year-old was accused of shooting the man she still considered her boyfriend, a retired auto worker named Vance Evans.
It was simply jealousy over another woman. That feeling apparently was not mutual. He was seeing someone else.
That's what the state contended. But in her 5-hour testimony at trial, Tammy had claimed that the shooting had been a tragic accident.
The way she was claiming the gun went off was that they were hugging and she was holding the gun behind him and it went off.
Would the jury believe her explanation? It took them less than 3 hours to make their decision.
That included the time that they ate dinner.
The jury found Tammy Cole guilty of first-degree murder.
The jury just did not believe what she had said.
She was also found guilty of attempted arson for trying to burn down the house where the shooting took place.
We were all relieved, we were happy, and it was a part of the story that, we could put an end to.
Tammy, on the other hand, showed little emotion as the verdict was read.
She was pretty much stone-faced. She just sat there.
2 months later, on May 25th, Tammy was sentenced to life in prison.
She has to serve at least 37 years before she can be considered for parole.
According to Vance's friends and family, the sentence didn't go far enough.
If we could ask for the death penalty, I would have, but Wisconsin doesn't have it.
I hope she spends a long, miserable life in prison.
I don't ever want to see her outside the bars or the fence of that jail unless she's being carried out in a body bag.
Even with Tammy behind bars, Vance's friends and family struggle with one question. Why?
She's definitely got something wrong upstairs. I mean, anybody that could just do that has to have something wrong.
Or was she simply carried away by her feelings for the man they all loved?
Everyone felt like they were Vance's favorite. She may have felt that as well and just took it one step further.
I think she was in love and it took over, and, love does bad things.
Humans are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine. A pocket full of change, a perceived slight, or simply because someone they view as property decides to walk away. I tell you, in my years of looking at the dark side of the human soul, it is always the mundane motives that lead to the most brutal acts. Welcome to Prescott, Arizona. It is a quiet place surrounded by the Prescott National Forest, a place where people ride dirt bikes and shoot at targets during the day. But the woods have a way of keeping secrets, and on the evening of September 29th, 1988, those woods gave up a terrible one. A target shooter was packing up for the night near an area known to the locals as Gordo's Pit. He saw a pile of garbage bags in a fire pit and something poking out that looked like a stick. But it was not a stick. It was a human arm. The local sheriff's office arrived, and what they found was a scene of unimaginable indignity. The body had been covered in trash and burned beyond recognition. It is a profound level of disrespect to destroy a human being in such a manner. The medical examiner could not even determine the exact cause of death due to the extensive thermal damage, but he found heat-killed fly larvae on the remains. That tells an investigator something very important. It tells you there was a gap in time between the murder and the burning. This was a dump site, not the primary crime scene. Eventually, dental records gave this tragic figure a name, Pamela Pitts. She was 19 years old. She had been missing for 13 days, last seen on September 16, 1988. When you have a victim, you must look at who they were to understand why they were taken. Pam was a bright light. She was artistic, outgoing, a wonderful older sister who mentored her siblings. She was full of life and looking toward her future, perhaps in beauty college or fashion design. But bright lights often attract moths, and sometimes they attract black holes. In the summer of 1988, Pam made a fateful decision to move in with a new friend, an 18-year-old girl named Shelley Norgard. If Pam was the light, Shelley was the void. Shelley was awkward, a girl with severe abandonment issues stemming from a fractured home life. Her mother was gone, her father was a strict disciplinarian, and Shelley was desperate to never return to his roof. She latched onto Pam. She wanted a family connection, but what she really wanted was possession. You see, a healthy person seeks companionship, but a broken person seeks control. When Pam got a job at a restaurant and started reconnecting with her old boyfriend, Bobby Kitchener, Shelley felt her grip slipping. Rent money became an issue. Shelley was lying, spinning tales, showing herself to be thoroughly untrustworthy. Pam, being a sensible young woman, decided she had enough and told her father she was going to move back home. She just had to tell Shelley. That was a fatal mistake. You never warn a possessive person that you are escaping. When detectives spoke to Shelley, she played the concerned roommate. She claimed Pam just took off. She conveniently forgot to mention that Pam left her car, her purse, and all her personal belongings behind. My. People who run away to start a new life do not leave their money and identification sitting on the kitchen counter. Shelley offered an alibi for the night of the 16th. She claimed she got off work, picked up her boyfriend Ray Clerks, met friends, watched a movie, and then just drove around between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. Nobody just drives around aimlessly for 3 hours in the middle of the night without a reason. When investigators pressed Ray Clerks to corroborate this, he could not do it. He said she came home at 11:30, not 2:30 as she claimed. Ray grew tired of the questions and stopped talking. The boyfriend, Bobby Kitchener, was cleared with a solid alibi. But Shelley's friends painted a very dark picture. On the night Pam vanished, Shelley was furious. She was hunting for Pam, telling anyone who would listen that Pam was responsible for everything wrong in her life. This is classic psychological projection. Shelley was a failure in her own eyes, so she made Pam the scapegoat. Even more chilling, Shelley had a habit of bragging about how to dispose of a body. She theorized that the best way was to make someone a missing person, then burn them beyond recognition, or drop them in a mine shaft. You have to be kidding me. When someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. But the physical evidence simply was not there. No genetic material, no blood at the apartment. Rumors began to swirl around the town. People talk about satanic cults and ritualistic sacrifices at Gordo's Pit. I tell you, this is absolute nonsense. People watch too much television. They want to believe in boogeymen in black robes because the alternative is much more terrifying. The alternative is that the monster is the quiet girl sleeping in the next bedroom. The investigation chased ghosts, even zeroing in on another teenager named Melinda Perry because of a rumored fistfight, leading to a useless perjury charge that went nowhere. For 3 years, the case grew cold. Pam's family sat in an agonizing limbo where hope slowly turns to ash. Then, on May 25, 1991, the universe decided to balance the scales. College students exploring a cave found a vertical mine shaft. At the bottom, wrapped in a waterbed liner, was a decomposing human body. The victim had been shot in the head. Dental records confirmed it was 24-year-old Ray Clerks. Yes, the same Ray Clerks who was Shelley Norgard's boyfriend. Ray's family had reported him missing 3 days earlier. Ray was an aspiring commercial pilot, a responsible young man who was planning to move back to California. Crucially, he was planning to go without Shelley. The pattern repeats. Another person tries to walk away from Shelley Norgard, and another person ends up dead. Detectives found a single fingerprint on a flashlight dropped in the mine shaft. It belonged to Shelley. When they approached her car, the foul stench of death hit them like a physical blow. The trunk was soaked in blood, matching Ray's type. She was arrested on June 4th, 1991. When backed into a corner, killers will always try to minimize their guilt. Shelley claimed they were stargazing, and when Ray said he was leaving and taking their dogs, she lost her mind and shot him. She wrapped him up, drove him into the woods, and later used a 4-wheel drive truck to dump him in a mine shaft, just like she had bragged about years earlier. She took a plea deal for second-degree murder and received a 20-year sentence. But what about Pam? Shelley was locked up, which gave Pam's family some peace, knowing she could not hurt anyone else. But justice for Pam remained elusive. The system demands proof, not just strong suspicion. 18 years ticked by. In March of 2011, a cold case team took another look. Detective Dart saw the connection immediately. Shelley was due for release soon. Investigators interviewed her in prison, hoping to rattle her cage, then monitored 97 of her phone calls. Nothing. She was released, got married, changed her name to Shelley Norgar Harmon, and started a new life. Pretending the blood on her hands had washed away. But Detective Dart is a patient man. In the spring of 2017, he went back and listened to those calls again. He found one call to her father. They were discussing the detectives asking about Pam. Her father asked what actually happened, noting she had never told him the truth in 20 years. And then there was silence. The line just went dead with the weight of unspoken guilt. That silence, combined with a mountain of circumstantial evidence, was enough. On June 2nd, 2017, they arrested her. I love the look on a killer's face when the past finally catches up to them. It is a mixture of defiant resignation and absolute terror. But the passage of 30 years is the greatest enemy of a prosecutor. Witnesses die, memories fade. Facing a tough trial, they offered a plea. On March 1st, 2021, at the age of 50, Shelley finally confessed in court. She claimed she found Pam at the party. They argued, and she just started hitting her and could not stop. She conveniently left out the part where she poured gasoline on her former best friend and set her on fire. She received credit for the 20 years she served for Ray and the time spent in county jail, and she walked free. My time served for a second brutal murder. It leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. You want the maximum penalty. You want the air to open up and swallow a person who could commit such atrocities. But sometimes you have to take the small victory of a conviction. Pam Pitts and Ray Clerks were beautiful young people who trusted the wrong person. They were murdered by a parasite who fed on their light and destroyed them when they tried to pull away. I want the world to know exactly who Shelley Norgard is. A person capable of taking the lives of those she professed to love, walking the streets among us, carrying the darkest of secrets. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine. Money and pure unadulterated greed usually sit right at the very top of that miserable list. I tell you, whenever you look at a tragedy that tears a dignified, decent family right down to the studs, you only need to follow the paper trail. We are taking a slow walk back to February 4th, 1991, in the quiet, picturesque town of LaGrange, Georgia. Margaret Abernathy was 66 years old, a beloved matriarch, a grandmother, and a remarkably sharp businesswoman who built an empire from a local car dealership and gave endlessly to her community. She was a woman who would pull the stars down from the sky for her 3 children. Yet on that Monday afternoon, her middle daughter, Priscilla Matula, called 911 claiming she found her mother bleeding on the bathroom floor after an apparent home invasion. Paramedics rushed Margaret to the hospital where she lay unconscious, making agonal snoring sounds, clinging to life by a solitary fraying thread. The doctors quickly discovered the bitter truth. She had not fallen and hit her head. She had been shot twice in the back of the head with a small caliber weapon. She eventually passed away when the machines were turned off. The family home immediately transformed into a crime scene, and the lies began to unravel faster than cheap yarn. When investigators walked through that house, they saw the classic, lazy hallmarks of a staged burglary. You have an open back door with a broken glass pane, but the glass shards were heavily resting on the outside, and the hole was far too small for any human hand to reach through and unlock the door. You have to be kidding me. Criminals always think we are stupid. They pull drawers out and set items neatly on the floor, hoping we will buy the childish illusion of a ransacking. The expensive television sets and electronics were completely untouched. A supposed burglar bypassed the easy money just to steal a mink coat, a small gun, and some jewelry. We knew instantly this was an inside job orchestrated by someone desperate to hide their sinister tracks. The family tried to point the finger at a gentle giant named Ayaka, who lived in the home, but the man was simply hiding at a job interview at another dealership. They tried to cast heavy shadows on the son Alec, whispering about his debts and a $40,000 life insurance policy, but his alibi was completely airtight. Then a local bank manager made a phone call, and the real motive stepped right out into the blinding daylight. Margaret had visited the bank 2 days prior, utterly distraught and physically shaking, demanding to remove Priscilla from all business accounts immediately. The bank told her she had to come back on Monday. Margaret never made it to Monday. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation uncovered a massive check kiting scheme. Priscilla was desperately robbing Peter to pay Paul, floating bad checks for $20,000 and $30,000, bleeding her own mother dry just to make her failing car lot look profitable. Margaret had already generously loaned her daughter $130,000, putting her own home up as collateral to help Priscilla buy that dealership. When Margaret finally discovered the massive accounting discrepancies, she confronted her daughter. She was going to cut the financial cord and leave Priscilla with absolutely nothing. That is exactly when the cold creature living inside Priscilla decided to solve a banking problem with a bullet. Priscilla lied to the police about her morning routine, claiming she was stuck in traffic at the post office before going to work. But a convenience store clerk saw her early that morning, and another witness saw her vehicle parked at Margaret's house around 10 in the morning while hearing the sharp crack of a gunshot. Now let us talk about the sheer unimaginable coldness of this act. The blood evidence on the pillows showed that Margaret was shot the first time while she was peacefully asleep in her own bed. Her own flesh and blood walked into her most private sanctuary and pulled the trigger, but it did not kill her immediately. Priscilla left the house to go back to work and establish a pathetic alibi. In the hours that passed, Margaret woke up. She heroically managed to crawl from her bed into the bathroom. She was bleeding heavily, using toilet tissue to clean herself, likely confused and deeply terrified, realizing her own daughter was a monster in the room. Then Priscilla returned around 12:30 in the afternoon under the false guise of checking on her mother. She found her mother still breathing on the floor. Did she call for an ambulance right then? Did she kneel down and hold her dying mother's hand? No. She raised that small-caliber weapon again and fired a second calculated shot directly into her mother's brain stem, sealing her fate forever before calling the authorities to play the grieving victim. My. The boundless depth of human depravity never ceased to amaze me. She executed the wonderful woman who gave her life, all to keep a failing business afloat. Even when out on bond awaiting trial, Priscilla arrogantly tried to manipulate a witness over the telephone to change her story, an act born of pure toxic desperation. The jury saw right through her smoke and mirrors, convicting her on strong circumstantial evidence and handing down a life sentence in August of 1992. The real lasting tragedy here is not just the senseless loss of a generous woman, but the absolute annihilation of an entire family. When Margaret died, the very soul of that family died with her. The Sunday dinners, the warm vacations, the safety they all felt, it was all permanently erased by the limitless greed of a daughter who looked at her loving mother and saw nothing but an endless bank account. Humans are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine. Love, hate, revenge, those are the classics. But feathers? Exotic birds? I tell you, just when you think you have seen the absolute bottom of the human soul, someone hands you a shovel. Welcome to High Point, North Carolina. The date is April 25th, 1991. A crisp spring morning that shatters the illusion of safety in a quiet, tight-knit community. A call comes in just after 8 o'clock. A body found on the side of Highway 68. Major Tom Shepard arrives at the scene. He sees a station wagon, hood popped, sitting idle. In the grassy ditch just behind it, a man lies face down. 2 shots to the head, 1 to the back. The wallet is missing. A casual observer looks at this and says robbery, but a seasoned investigator looks closer. There's a footprint on the back of the victim's shirt. My. You do not step on a man you are just robbing in a panic. You step on a man to hold him down, to exert absolute dominance while you end his life from point-blank range. This is an execution. This is calculated. This is personal. They run the license tags. The car belongs to Mr. Fred Brown, 45 years old, a retired military officer who served bravely during the Vietnam War, a respected economic professor at the local community college, a man universally described as a truly nice guy. Everyone loved Fred. He survived the horrors of war only to be gunned down on a grassy roadside in his own hometown. You have to ask yourself, who would want a man like this dead? The answer, as it so often does, hides behind the closed doors of his own home. You start with the family. That is homicide investigation rule number 1. Detectives knock on the door and break the devastating news to his wife of 20 years, Patricia Brown, Pat as they call her. Now, when you tell a woman her husband of 2 decades has been murdered, you expect a visceral reaction. You expect tears, denial, a total collapse of their world. What do the detectives get from Pat? Nothing. Cold, detached, a complete lack of genuine concern. That is a red flag waving in hurricane winds. Pat spins a beautiful fairy tale for the police. We have a wonderful marriage, she says. No financial problems. She says, everything is perfect. But perfect marriages do not end with a footprint on a dead man's back. Let us look deeper into Patricia. She grew up poor in Oklahoma, married Fred, the dashing soldier, her knight in shining armor, who rescued her from a life of struggle. But over the years, the armor rusted in her eyes. Pat had open heart surgery in 1990. A brush with death can change a person profoundly. It can make them appreciate the fragile beauty of life. Or, in Pat's case, it can make them bitter, greedy, and utterly unhinged. She develops an obsession. Exotic birds. Not 1, not 2, but 50 or 60 of these loud, expensive, demanding creatures filling their beautiful home. She demands a special room for them. Then she wants a hot tub, then a privacy fence. She is bleeding their life savings dry, entirely consumed by her own desires. Fred, being the dutiful, loyal husband, tries to appease her. He takes on debt. He works hard. But he knows. He knows the darkness growing inside his own house. He tells a trusted colleague, point blank, that he would not be surprised if Pat put a contract out on his life. He looked into his friend's eyes and said, they would be better off with me dead. He knew his wife had morphed into a monster of entitlement, but his deep religious faith and his unshakable loyalty kept him chained to her. He refused a divorce. He honored his vows. And she used that beautiful loyalty to lead him directly to the slaughter. Despite the obvious motive in the housekeeper's tales of verbal abuse, Pat has an ironclad alibi. She was teaching a real estate class miles away. Her daughter was out with friends. Her son was away at school. The physical evidence at the scene is non-existent. No weapon, no witnesses to the actual shooting, just echoes of gunshots in the dark. The investigation hits a brick wall. The case grows cold. Years pass. Pat collects a life insurance. She gets estate pay. She sells family land, takes her hundreds of thousands of dollars, and moves to Alabama to open an exotic pet business called Sassy's Pets. She thinks she has won. She thinks she has outsmarted the police, the justice system, and God himself. She trades her husband's blood for feathers and a double-wide trailer. But guilt is a funny thing. It festers. It rots the human conscience from the inside out. Jump to July 1994. Reading, Pennsylvania. Over 3 years after Fred took his last breath, a woman finds an envelope left behind by her father. The front of the envelope reads, "Open only if I die." Curiosity takes over. She opens it, and inside is a full, chilling confession to the murder of Fred Brown. You have to be kidding me. You do not get breaks like this unless the universe decides it is time to balance the scales. Pennsylvania authorities call High Point. Detectives fly north and sit down with the author of the letter. Enter Leroy Wetzel, nickname Short Circuit. A man standing exactly 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighing 145 pounds, covered in tattoos, with a beard hanging down his chest. A petty criminal, an ex-convict, and crucially, the ex-husband of Sheila Wetzel. Sheila just happens to be Patricia Brown's younger sister. The pieces fall into place with a sickening thud. Leroy is bad, he has an attitude, but right now, he is singing like a canary. He tells them everything. Pat wanted the $250,000 life insurance payout to fund her bird sanctuary and the lavish lifestyle she felt she was owed. She complained bitterly to her sister Sheila about how cheap Fred was. Sheila turned to her husband Leroy. The price tag for a good man's life? $30,000. They plotted it for an entire year. Pat orchestrated the perfect timing. April 24th, 1991. She ensures she has an alibi. Leroy drives down from Pennsylvania with a .22 caliber handgun. He pulls onto Gallimore Dairy Road in the dead of night, removes the ignition coil from his own car to disable it, and calls the one man he knows will leave the safety of his home to help a stranded stranger. Fred Brown. Fred arrives. He leans under the hood to help. Leroy goes to the back seat, grabs a gun, pulls it out, and tells Fred they need to take a walk. He looks this good man in the eye and tells him, "My wife wants you dead." Imagine the sheer, icy horror of that moment. Imagine the ultimate betrayal freezing Fred's blood in his veins as he realizes his own wife sent the Grim Reaper to the roadside. Fred begs for his life. Then he turns and runs. Leroy shoots him in the back. Fred goes down, face first into the dirt. Leroy walks up, places his foot on Fred's back to hold him down, and fires twice more into his head. A cold-blooded, pathetic assassination. Leroy stages it poorly as a robbery, taking the wallet and tossing it on his drive back to Alabama, later throwing the gun into the Coosa River. And the most pathetic, laughable part of this entire Greek tragedy, Pat never even paid him the $30,000. She kept dodging him, kept saying she did not have the cash. if you are going to hire a hitman, you probably ought to pay him. Leroy wrote those confession letters because he got stiffed by a greedy housewife and because the ghost of Fred Brown was heavily taxing his pathetic conscience. The police do their homework. They check the phone records. They find the exact calls between the sisters. They find a traffic ticket proving Leroy was exactly where he said he was. Leroy's story is rock solid. In July 1994, they arrest Pat and Sheila. Sheila, realizing the game is over, flips immediately and agrees to testify against her own sister. At the trial in May 1995, the courtroom is packed. Leroy takes the stand, a tiny, dangerous man holding a simple stapler to demonstrate to a breathless jury how he executed a man twice his worth. You could drop a pin in that room. Pat's defense attorneys try a desperate, insulting maneuver, claiming Leroy was blackmailing Fred over a phantom affair, a complete and utter fabrication designed to smear a dead man's honor. The jury sees right through the smoke and the lies. After 2 days of deliberation, they return the only verdict that makes sense: guilty of first-degree murder. The judge hands Patricia Brown life in prison. She dies behind bars in 2002, less than 7 years into her sentence. A fitting, suffocating end for a woman who loved putting beautiful things in cages. Leroy and Sheila both plead guilty to second-degree murder and get 50 years each. 3 lives completely destroyed, 1 innocent man dead, all over a flock of birds and some real estate debt. Fred Brown deserved so much better from this world. He was a decent, honest man who loved his country, loved his students, and fiercely loved the family that ultimately betrayed him. His legacy is one of unwavering kindness and tragic loyalty, a stark reminder that even in the darkest, most treacherous shadows of human depravity, the light of a genuinely good man still means something. My. Because she knew she could not do anything further to help him, and so she immediately ran out when she heard the motorcycle coming by to wave someone down to call 911. The nephew, Nick French, was on duty as a police officer when he got the news. His mom called, and she said, "Uncle Steve died." And, it was just kind of disbelief. I mean, I knew it was for real, but, it did not really sink in. So I got down there as quick as I could. I just remember the whole time going through my head was, how? Why? The phone rang, and Rosemary saw that it was her nephew calling. He said, "Uncle Steve died. Uncle Steve died. That was not possible. It was not possible. How could he be gone?" No, she could not believe it. With Rosemary 700 miles away, Nick and his family rallied around Lana. He felt awful because he knew she loved Uncle Steve. And he just kept thinking, I am upset right now, but I cannot imagine what she's going through to find her husband, on the ground like this. Lana feared the vertigo of Steve could cause a fall down the stairs. She kept saying that, "I think he fell down the stairs, and that is horrible, and I hope he did not." Sergeant Day checked for any signs that Steve might have been attacked. This looked like it was probably a natural death, but you never know. So Sergeant Day did at that point go upstairs to look to see what had happened. That would be a little unnerving to just go through a labyrinth of a house that you had never seen before, because you never know what could be around the corner. You could tell that there did not appear to be a sign of struggle. No other signs of someone else being up there having done something to him. Nothing significant at all. In the master bedroom, the bed sheet was all rumpled up, but nothing suggested Steve had any kind of struggle. It looked as if the cause of death would not be a mystery for the coroner. The coroner could not see any contusions or bruises. Nothing suggested Steve fell down the staircase. So she put the floor under him? Yeah, she tried to move it. It looked as though Steve made it to the bottom of the stairs and then collapsed. The coroner said, "I believe he had a heart attack." And Rosemary kind of said, "What leads you to that opinion?" And she said, "Well, the coloration of his face. There was blueness that went across the top of the chest, almost in a line, and that oftentimes according to the coroner, is an indication that he may have had a heart attack. Back in the living room, Sergeant Day told Lana what they thought had happened. When I walked to the top of the stairs, I noticed that the carpet on the staircase kind of has a direction to it. So, I can see footprints. I think he may have come to the bottom of the staircase. Do not dwell on the staircase, because I know that is a hard claim to make. I do not know how he made it. I do not know what he was thinking. I think this was the day God chose. That is what I told him. While Lana digested the news, Nick and his family helped with cleaning up. We wanted to make the house still comfortable enough for her. We knew she was going to be exhausted, and she had to spend the night there. But they were shocked at what they found in the bedroom. When we went upstairs, I immediately noticed a smell. It was a smell of human filth. Excrement, urine. So we looked around, and there was huge urine discoloration spots in the middle of the bed. The soil mattress raised some questions. So I am thinking the amount of urine that it would take to soak through this mattress. Steve had to have been going to the bathroom in this bed for days. So we immediately thought we have to get this mattress out of the room. We could barely pick it up. It was extremely heavy. We took the mattress and we tossed it out of the house. When Rosemary talked with Lana on the phone, she asked her, how did Steve get so ill? Hello? When I spoke with Lana much later in that evening, I asked her what happened. And she said he had not been feeling well for a few days. And I said, well, why did you not call somebody? Why did you not let somebody know? And she said, well, he was starting to feel better. She said Steve never called because he had been sleeping heavily and misplaced his cell phone a week earlier. Lana claimed that it had been missing for several days. My brother was never, ever without his phone. He just was always attached to his phone. It went everywhere with him. It was at that point where I really felt like something very sinister was going on, and I did not know what it was. The sister of Steve, Rosemary, asked his widow Lana about his will. Steve and I had talked many times about what it was that he wanted to do when that time came, and he wanted to be buried in that beautiful cemetery in Fort Lauderdale. When I asked Lana, she said there is no will. Lana had already made the arrangements. Steve was due to be cremated, and she was planning his memorial. On August 4th, 2018, Lana held a service for Steve at their home. It was highly emotional. Everybody there felt such a deep connection to Steve. It was just hard to stay calm. Even though it was supposed to be a celebration of his life, it just could not help but feel the deep, deep sorrow that everybody felt. If there's any space that it is okay to be sad and to cry a little bit, this is that time. And I think that it is okay today that we celebrate a life well lived and at the same time be sad. At the memorial, Rosemary and the family were surprised to find Lana had already started to clear out the belongings of Steve. She had already began taking all of his clothes, all of his personal items, and she donated them all to the Veterans Affairs. I was almost knocked off my feet to see the number of hangers, empty hangers in that closet, with not a single stitch of clothes. A lot of watches missing, a lot of jewelry missing. His wedding ring was missing, and the claims of Lana about Steve not having will raise further suspicions. That is something that Steve and I and Steve and many other people had discussed, was how important it was to make sure that everything was in order. There is absolutely no logic in my brother, an accountant, a person who is meticulous with his finances, not having a will. The family felt like something was not adding up. We were all on the same page here. We knew something was going on. And that was when we called the medical examiner office and said, hey, please do an autopsy. And at the very least, if you're not going to do that, do a toxicology. And they agreed to it. Detective Motes of the York County Sheriff Office was also notified of the suspicions of the family about the death of Steve. Good morning, everybody. But when the autopsy report came in, it listed signs of heart disease and pointed to death by natural causes. Ah, yes, thank you. The initial autopsy still showed that it was likely a heart attack, but they had to wait for the toxicologist's report to come back to finally make an actual finding. It would take a few weeks before those results arrived. So we waited on pins and needles for the truth to come out. We just knew that there was something was very wrong. Thank you. When the toxicology report on the blood of Steve Clayton came back, it was shocking. It showed traces of several sedatives, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl. But that was not all. The biggest shock in the toxicology results was tetrahydrozoline, also known as THC. It is the active ingredient in eye drops like Visine, Murine, or other over-the-counter eye drops. THC is not ever meant to be ingested. Given in small doses, it makes you feel very ill. It makes you nauseous. It makes you dizzy. It will make you pass out eventually. But in large quantities, it is deadly. It shuts your central nervous system down, and it will kill you. The detectives learned that THC can limit the blood supply to vital organs, leading to a heart attack. When the body cam went up there, the Visine you see was on the tall dresser that is away from the bed. That was where he could not get up to get the Visine. Now it was very clear. This is not a natural death. Detective Moats needed to have a talk with Lana Clayton. 5 weeks after the sudden death of her husband, Lana Clayton was questioned by detectives. You know, if you were a witness in this case for us. The detectives wanted to know more about the medications found in the blood of Steve. You know what he would say? He took Benadryl. It is a long list. But there was no mention of THC, the drug that killed Steve. It is colorless, it is odorless, and it is tasteless, which makes it the perfect thing to give to someone if you want to poison them. The level of THC in the blood of Steve was so high that it was clear that it was the cause of death. It is a lethal level no matter what way you look at it. The detectives pressed on. Somehow or another there was a large amount of Visine in his system. So that is what we are trying to get to the bottom of. I know he puts the Visine in his coffee. He puts it in there every day. What do you know about it? What I know about it? I know it makes you have diarrhea. There were basically two things that the police were now considering. One, he was poisoned. There was foul play. Two, he ingested it on his own, whether it was intentional or unintentional. But as police probed the relationship of Steve and Lana, how has your life been? Sometimes we would have fun and everything, and then sometimes I would be on eggshells all the time. I was on eggshells. Lana claimed that Steve had a dark side. He can be really nasty. What does nasty Steve look like? He is really verbally abusive, calling me names. Like what would he call you? I do not know. Stupid bitch. I do not know. Just all kind of things. I could see it escalating until you notice. Just, try and stay out of his way. After the interview of Lana, detectives ordered a search of the house. They were looking for cups or glasses that had a residue in them. They were looking for anything they could find that helped them determine what could have caused this. Anything document-wise that would show trouble in the marriage. But during that time, Lana told the officer that she wanted to speak again with Detective Moats. Detective Moats recorded what Lana had to say. I told you a little bit about Stephen. That it was worse than what I told you. He was verbally and physically abusive. Lana, for God's sake. And yell at me and call me names. His anger built up, I would do something that would irritate him until the point where he would explode. Okay, what are you trying to do? Huh? After he had that incident, which he said it was vertigo, and I was taking care of him and everything, but I was still so angry. And my girlfriend at work told me, you want to get even with somebody, put Visine in a drink, it will cause diarrhea. It was then that Lana dropped a bombshell. When I saw that Visine on the table, it just came back to me, and I just took and squirted it. And what did you squirt it into? His water. Into his water? So, you do not know the full amount. I mean, you just squeezed. I think I put the whole thing in. So, the whole bottle? I think I did. I squeezed it hard. I just saw it there, and I just did it. What are your plans tonight now? Just stay here. You'll be okay. I know it is a lot on your plate. Just what if I do? What if I cause his death with the Visine? Anything else that you want to add? No. If there is more, get it off your chest. That is it. It was a damning confession. But the detectives could not arrest Lana just yet. After Lana confessed, the police left. They got their ducks in a row as far as what charges would be made. And they were ready to come back the next day to arrest Lana Clayton. But early that morning, they got a call from one of the neighbors of Lana. They found notes of suicide. They were afraid that she had harmed herself. She knew the police were coming back the next day, and she knew they would have warrants for arrest. She turned the gas on and went upstairs and took some pills to kill herself. They found her unconscious in her bed. She was taken into the hospital where she was treated and ultimately released, and then immediately arrested on the charges of murder and tampering with food items. The family was informed of the arrest of Lana. A detective from York County called me and said, "Hey, Nick, I just want to bring you up to speed here." Lana confessed, and I pulled over right away. It hit me like a ton of bricks, literally like a baseball bat to the face. I answered the phone, and Rosemary was on the other end screaming that she killed him. On January 16th, 2020, Lana accepted a plea deal and admitted guilt on charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. The original indictment was for murder. You were pleading to a lesser offense, voluntary manslaughter. My own knowledge of it was by watching movies and the cause of discomfort and diarrhea. Lana insisted she never intended for Steve to die and just wanted revenge for his abuse. But his friends and family did not buy that Steve was ever abusive. She tried to assassinate the character of Steve because other people who knew him and who he had mentored came forward to say he was a wonderful person. There was no abuse of any sort with Stephen. She was trying to do whatever she could to save herself from a very, very, very long sentence and possibly the death penalty. But he was a gentle soul, not capable of harming someone. Based on the toxicology report, the prosecutors believe Steve suffered for 3 days before dying. Lana told us that the fatal dose was on Thursday morning. But we know as a matter of scientific fact from the toxicologist that is impossible. He would have died Thursday morning if he had ingested that Thursday morning. For him to have been sick all of that time, it indicated that she continually gave him medication throughout that time, poisoned him with Visine little by little. And Lana, a nurse, never sought to help him after the initial poisoning. Stephen would not have stayed in a urine-soaked mattress. He was a clean freak. He would not have stood for such a thing. He was too weak to get up and move. There was no phone in the house. There was no landline, so he could not call somebody. So this put him in a situation of being tortured with no way to get help. And so finally she knew Saturday, that is it. And she squeezed a whole bottle of Visine into his water, had him drink it, and then went out to mow the grass. So she did not have to watch the horror of his death. Instead of a nurse that helps, she is the nurse from hell. 53-year-old Lana Clayton was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She never admitted that she intended to kill Steve, but the facts showed otherwise. I feel like there is no penalty that would have been great enough for Lana. This was 3 days of methodically poisoning my best friend and then killing him. The thought process that had to go into her putting on this charade. And she carried that right on through till the end. And I think that is the definition of a monster. But Lana almost got away with it. There almost was not an autopsy. If there had not been an autopsy, the ruling of the coroner would have been, this was likely a hard episode, and it was natural causes. The truth is she did this to herself, Had she been just the same quiet, gentle Lana, grieving the loss of Steve, no one would have had any suspicion whatsoever. Although Lana insisted the death of Steve was unintentional. His family and the prosecution believed it was a deliberate act motivated by financial gain. One obvious and glaring motive was the wealth of Steve. Without a will in the state of South Carolina, everything goes to the spouse. So Lana would know, if Steve is gone, I get everything. If somebody wanted to do something malicious like this, all they had to do was get rid of the will, and everything belonged to them. The family tried to move on without Steve in their lives. Hello. I mean, I miss a lot about Steve, but I miss his voice. I miss hearing his voice. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. I think what I miss about Steve is his over-the-top personality. This big, boisterous, gregarious character that entered the room and just took over everything. Steve was an amazing person. It has been difficult not having him around. The thing I miss the most about Steve is his laughter and his ability to light up a room. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. The journey of life is often paved with unexpected turns. And the story of Steve Clayton stands as a testament to the fragility of happiness and the enduring power of family bonds. When we look back at the years before the tragedy, we see a man who truly understood the art of living. Steve did not just accumulate wealth. He accumulated moments of joy. He invested his resources into the lives of others, understanding that the greatest return on investment was the success and happiness of those he mentored. His home on the lake was not just a structure of wood and stone. It was a sanctuary where laughter echoed and where every holiday was treated as a milestone to be cherished. One cannot help but reflect on the nature of trust. Steve was a man who opened his heart completely. He did not navigate the world with suspicion, but with a genuine desire to connect. He found in Lana a companion who, on the surface, appeared to be the gentle partner he had always sought. It is a profound human tragedy when that trust, the very bedrock of marital union, is exploited. The shift in their domestic life from joy to the chilling reality of his final days is a stark reminder that we never truly know the depth of what happens behind closed doors. Yet, amidst the shadow of this terrible betrayal, there exists the light of those who loved him, the persistence of Rosemary, the vigilance of Nick, and the commitment of the investigative team illustrate the triumph of truth over deception. They refuse to accept the easy explanation. They look beyond the surface, questioning the narrative of a natural death that was presented to them. In doing so, they ensured that the memory of Steve was not lost to a false history. They honored him by seeking justice, demonstrating that even when a life is stolen, the truth has a way of rising to the surface, demanding to be heard. As we look at the legacy of Steve, we see a man who was, above all else, a builder. He built businesses, he built relationships, and he built a reputation for generosity that stretched across the nation. He taught his family how to love, how to laugh, and how to hold on to the moments that matter. Though his life was cut short by a calculated and cruel act, the ripples of his kindness continue to be felt. Every young man he mentored who is now running his own business, every friend who remembers his boisterous laugh, and every family member who carries his memory forward is a part of the legacy of Steve. In the end, this story serves as a somber reflection on the complexities of a human heart. It teaches us to cherish our loved ones, to communicate with sincerity, and to be mindful of the people we invite into our most intimate spaces. It highlights the importance of accountability, reminding us that every action has a consequence, and that justice, while often delayed, is an essential pursuit for those left behind to heal. The pain of losing Steve is immeasurable, but his life serves as a beautiful, albeit brief, example of what it means to be truly generous. He left the world a better place, and though his voice is no longer heard, the echoes of his laughter and the impact of his life remain etched in the hearts of those who knew him best. The memory of Steve Clayton remains a guiding force for those he left behind. They carry his stories, they recount his jokes, and they share the lessons he taught them about finance, business, and most importantly, the value of family. The house on the lake, once a place of vibrant parties and warm gatherings, is now a place of memory, but it does not diminish the spirit of what they experienced there. The family finds solace in the knowledge that they did everything they could to bring the truth to light, and in doing so, they have honored the man who always looked out for them. It is a difficult task to reconcile the image of the man who danced with such abandon at the wedding of his sister with the image of the man who, in his final days, was isolated and suffering. Yet, his family chooses to focus on the former. They choose to remember the Steve who played on the floor with his grandchildren, the Steve who mentored the next generation, and the Steve who was quite simply the hero of their story. This choice is their act of resilience. It is their way of ensuring that the horror of the final chapter does not overshadow the entirety of the narrative of his life. As time moves forward, the legal proceedings become a footnote in the grand biography of Steve Clayton. While the impact of his character remains the main text, we are reminded that human life is fragile, and the decisions we make in our relationships have profound implications. The story of Steve and Lana is a complex tapestry of love, deception, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. It stands as a cautionary tale, but also as a reminder of the strength of a human spirit when faced with the unimaginable. In the quiet moments, when the dust of the legal battles is settled, the family of Steve gathers to celebrate him. They do not dwell on the darkness. They elevate the light. They toast to the man who retired at 41 not to rest, but to dedicate his life to the benefit of others. They toast to the brother, the uncle, the mentor, and the friend. They toast to the life of a man who, until the very end, believed in the goodness of others. And in that belief, he found a richness that no amount of money could buy. The legacy of Steve Clayton is not found in the court documents or the headlines that surrounded his death. It is found in the laughter of his nieces and nephews, the wisdom he imparted to his ments, and the enduring bond of family that refused to let his story be silenced. He remains a symbol of generosity and warmth, a reminder to us all to live with our hearts open, even when the world gives us reason to close them. His story is a poignant, unforgettable chapter that continues to inspire those who strive to live a life of integrity and love. The resolution of the case brought a sense of closure to the family, but the emotional work of grieving never truly ends. Each family member processes a loss in their own time and in their own way. Rosemary, who looked up to her brother as a hero since childhood, finds comfort in the recordings and the memories of his laughter. Nick, who transitioned from his nephew to a key figure in the investigation, continues his life with a deeper appreciation for the weight of the work he does and the importance of family loyalty. The extended family, bound by their love for Steve, remains a tight-knit unit, supporting one another through the anniversaries and the quiet moments when his absence is most deeply felt. The tragedy of the death of Steve Clayton also serves as an important lesson for society at large, regarding the necessity of awareness in our personal lives. It underscores the importance of having legal affairs, such as wills and estate planning, in order not just for the sake of assets, but to ensure that the intentions and wishes of an individual are respected. The absence of a will in the case of Steve became a tool for manipulation, a reality that the family emphasizes to others as they look to protect their own loved ones. It is a practical yet vital component of his legacy that helps others avoid the pitfalls that contributed to the turmoil his family faced. Furthermore, the story highlights the critical role of medical scrutiny. The initial diagnosis of natural causes, had it been accepted without question by the family, would have allowed a murderer to walk free. The insistence on an autopsy and toxicology, driven by intuition and the persistent questions of the family, serves as a powerful reminder that we must be our own advocates and the advocates of those we love. It is a sobering lesson, but one that has undoubtedly empowered those who hear it to act with diligence when faced with circumstances that do not seem to align with the truth. In looking at the life of Steve as a whole, it is clear that he was a man who understood the fleeting nature of time. He lived with urgency, not in a way that caused stress, but in a way that ensured he never missed an opportunity to connect. He taught those around him that there is no substitute for showing up, for being present, and for being invested in the lives of the people who matter. Even when he was not physically present at every moment, his influence was felt in the way his family treated one another and in the values he instilled in them by example. The ending of this story is not in the prison sentence of Lana, nor in the legal findings of court. The ending is in the continued existence of the people who Steve loved. It is in the way his sister talks about him with a smile, even through the tears. It is in the way his family continues to gather, to celebrate, and to support one another. The life of Steve Clayton was a story of success, of love, and of a generous spirit that refused to be contained. And though the middle was interrupted by a dark shadow, The story itself remains one of light, of inspiration, and of an enduring humanity that persists long after life has ended. As the years pass, the details of the investigation may fade, but the essence of the man remains. He is remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived. He is remembered for the boy who played football, for the man who built a business from the ground up, for the uncle who danced at weddings, and for the brother who was a hero of his sister. He remains in the hearts of many, a model of what it means to be a truly successful human being, someone who achieved greatness, but whose greatest achievement was the love he gave to the world around him. This is the enduring truth of Steve Clayton, a life well lived, a legacy that will never be forgotten. This is a story of a man whose presence was as large as his heart, a man who lived with the singular purpose of lifting others toward their own potential. It is a story that begins with joy, laughter, and the unwavering bonds of family. And though it traverses a path of profound sorrow, it is ultimately a testament to the enduring impact of a life lived with generosity and grace. In the vibrant city of Miami, on the 10th day of March in the year 2007, the air was thick with the scent of celebration. It was a day of profound significance, a milestone that would forever be etched into the memory of the Clayton family. The occasion was the wedding of Rosemary Clayton, a day when the promise of future happiness felt as bright as the Florida sun. Beside her stood William Leslie, the man who had captured her heart, and walking her down the aisle was her brother, Steve Clayton. Steve was 52 years old, a man whose stature was only surpassed by his spirit. To Rosemary, he was more than a brother. He was a guiding light, a mentor, and a hero. Having lost their father 11 months prior to wedding, the role of giving the bride away fell to Steve, a responsibility he shouldered with the same dedication he applied to every facet of his life. As he walked his younger sister toward her future, the emotion in the room was palpable. It was a sentimental gathering, marked by the absence of their father, but filled with the strength of their family unit. Steve, as the oldest sibling, had naturally assumed the role of the patriarch. With 4 sisters and a gap of 10 years between him and his youngest sister, Rosemary, Steve had been a constant protective force throughout their lives. He was a brother who played football, the brother who wrestled in high school, and the brother who, upon graduating college with a degree in finance, transformed into a shrewd and successful businessman. Steve had founded a company named Physical Therapy Resources, an enterprise that grew from a local endeavor into a national network of centers. His success was not measured merely in financial terms, but in the lives he touched. He was a man who mentored young men, helping them navigate the complexities of starting businesses and finding their paths in life. He was generous with his resources and, more importantly, with his time. During the wedding festivities, Steve was the life of the party. He was the one who could stand before a crowd, microphone in hand, and deliver a speech that was entirely ad-libbed and yet profoundly heartfelt. He welcomed William into the family with a warmth that left no doubt about his sincerity. He spoke of their late father, honoring his memory, while embracing the new beginning for his sister. When the father-daughter dance was meant to happen, Steve stepped in. Before the music started, a surprise recording of their father played, a moment that bridged the gap between the past and the present. It was a testament to Steve's role as a protector and the entertainer, the one who kept everyone laughing, and the one who kept everyone calm. Despite his immense success and his tightly knit circle of family and friends, Steve's own romantic life had been a quest for a partner who could match his intensity and his capacity for love. He was a man who sought connection on an intellectual, emotional, and spiritual level, a standard that was not easily met. It would take a special person to capture his heart, and for several years, that person remained elusive. Then, in the late months of 2009, the trajectory of Steve's life shifted. He decided to leave the familiar surroundings of Florida to embrace a change of pace in North Carolina. Steve was a man of the outdoors. He loved the physical act of walking, of being in nature, and the move offered him a landscape that invited exploration. Within a few months of his arrival, Steve shared the news that he had met someone special. Her name was Lana Walsh. Lana was 12 years his junior, a nurse who had grown up in Oklahoma. To those who knew Steve, she seemed to study in contrasts. Steve was a man of gigantic personality, boisterous and gregarious, while Lana appeared quiet and reserved, almost like a wallflower. Yet, where others saw differences, Steve saw compatibility. He was smitten, and his affection was evident in every interaction. They were inseparable, often seen arm in arm, with Steve frequently hugging and kissing her. For his family, seeing Steve so happy was a source of comfort. They welcomed Lana with open arms, embracing her as part of their fold. As their relationship deepened, they began to build a life together. They moved in together, and then to Charlotte, adding dogs to their family, creatures that Steve adored. He would refer to her as his Lana Sue, a term of endearment that reflected the depth of his feelings. It seemed that Steve had finally found his missing piece, a sense of peace that had been absent for too long. In November 2013, Steve and Lana were married at their home in Charlotte. It was a beautiful event, filled with the warmth of family and the promise of a future together. Shortly thereafter, the couple moved to a new home on the banks of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. The house was a sanctuary, a stunning property that looked as if it had been lifted from a postcard. They spent their time decorating the space with Steve's collection of artwork and antiques, objects that held great personal meaning for him. Life at the lake was idyllic. They were closer to the extended family, and their home became a hub of activity. Steve, who was always a child of heart, flourished in the presence of his nieces and nephews, particularly Lana's grandchildren. He was the kind of man who would get down on the floor to play, who would engage in games with joyful intensity, and who would always find time to make a child laugh. There were no dull moments in the Clayton household. Steve and Lana were partners in life, sharing in the joys of the everyday. For 5 years, their life appeared to be a portrait of contentment. Then, in June of 2018, the rhythm of their lives was interrupted. Steve began to complain of vertigo, feelings of dizziness, nausea, and headaches. He mentioned that his ear hurt and that he had been feeling ill while working in the garden. As a nurse, Lana suggested that rest was the best remedy. Steve later recalled that he lay down, and when he opened his eyes again, 36 hours had passed. His sister, Rosemary, concerned by the reports of his illness, reached out to Lana for an explanation. It was unusual for someone as vibrant as Steve to lose such a significant stretch of time. Lana assured her that Steve was fine, that she was monitoring his condition, and that he was simply exhausted. Trusting in Lana's medical background, the family felt reassured. Indeed, 2 weeks later, Steve seemed to have recovered. He hosted a party for the 4th of July, dancing and laughing as he always did, looking every bit the man he had been before. However, the peace was fleeting. On July 21st, 2018, a call was placed to the York County Emergency Services. When law enforcement arrived at the grand home on the lake, they found Steve at the bottom of the staircase. He had passed away. The atmosphere in the house was heavy with grief. Lana, appearing distraught, spoke with the authorities, explaining that Steve had been struggling with vertigo for days, that he had collapsed, and that she had been doing her best to care for him. She expressed her own heartbreak, and the family, reeling from the sudden loss, leaned on one another for support. Nick French, Steve's nephew and a police officer, was among those who arrived at the house to comfort Lana. He could not comprehend how his uncle, a man of such vitality, could be gone. Initial assessment suggested a natural death, possibly a heart attack. The coroner noted the coloration of Steve's face and the circumstances of his collapse. However, as the family began to clear the house, they discovered things that did not align with a peaceful passing. The bedroom where Steve had spent his final days was in a state of distress, with the mattress soiled in a manner that suggested prolonged neglect. When Steve's sister, Rosemary, asked why they had not been informed of the severity of his illness, Lana maintained that Steve had simply been sleeping and that his mobile phone had been missing for a week. This claim struck the family as impossible. Steve was a man who was rarely without his phone, a detail-oriented individual who would never have allowed his health or his affairs to fall into such disarray. Suspicion began to take root. The family requested an autopsy and a toxicology report, refusing to accept that such a vibrant life had ended so inexplicably. When the results returned, they were devastating. The toxicology report revealed high levels of tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient found in over-the-counter eye drops. This substance, while harmless for its intended ocular use, is deadly when ingested. It restricts blood supply to vital organs, causing symptoms that mimic heart attacks, and, in sufficient quantities, leads to death. The discovery transformed the nature of Steve's passing from a tragedy into a crime. Investigators learned that Lana had, in fact, been administering this substance to Steve, slowly poisoning him over the course of several days. When confronted with the evidence, Lana eventually admitted to the act, claiming she had done so in response to alleged abuse, a characterization that Steve's friends and family vehemently denied. They remembered Steve as a gentle soul, a man who mentored others, and who was incapable of the behavior Lana described. The legal proceedings that followed were a testament to the pursuit of justice. Lana was arrested, though her own mental state remained a matter of concern as she attempted to end her own life before facing the full extent of the charges against her. She ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a food product, receiving a sentence of 25 years in prison. The trial and the revelations that emerged highlighted the chilling reality of a deception that had been cultivated over years. The motive, as prosecutors and family members surmised, was rooted in financial gain. Without a will, the laws of the state dictated that the spouse would inherit the estate, a fact that cast a dark shadow over the narrative of their marriage. Yet, as the legal chapters of this story closed, the family was left to contend with the void left by Steve's absence. They remembered him not for the manner of his death, but for the light of his life. They missed his voice, his boisterous personality, his ability to enter a room and make everyone feel seen and valued. He was a man who had built a legacy of generosity, a man who had taught so many the value of hard work, mentorship, and kindness. In the aftermath, the family found ways to carry forward the lessons Steve had imparted. They remembered the way he had laughed, the way he had danced at his sister's wedding, and the way he had poured himself into the lives of those around him. The tragedy of his passing served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing those we hold dear. It also underscored the necessity of vigilance and the strength that can be found in the bonds of family when faced with the unimaginable. Steve Clayton's story is one that lingers in the hearts of all who knew him. It is a story that speaks to the power of human connection, the pain of betrayal, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. While the circumstances of his departure were filled with shadow, the life he led was filled with light. He remains a figure of inspiration, a reminder to live fully, to give generously, and to always seek the truth. As time moved forward, the family continued to gather, though the empty chair at the table was a constant reminder of their loss. They shared stories of Steve's antics, his love for his dogs, his passion for the outdoors, and his unwavering dedication to his family. They turned their grief into a force for remembrance, ensuring that the essence of the man he was, the mentor, the brother, the son, the uncle, would never be forgotten. The house on the banks of Lake, Wiley eventually stood silent, its postcard-perfect view a backdrop to a past that had been irrevocably altered. But the memories, those were indelible. They lived on in the recordings of his voice, in the stories told by the young men he had mentored, and in the love shared among his sisters. Steve Clayton had lived his 52 years with an intensity that few possess. And while his time was cut short, the reach of his influence continued to expand. In the final analysis, this is not merely a tale of crime or a legal resolution. It is a narrative of human life, rich in detail and warmth. It is about the man who stood at the center of his family's world, the man who knew how to celebrate, how to comfort, and how to lead. It is a story about the sanctity of life and the profound responsibility we have to protect one another. We are reminded through the life of Steve Clayton that every interaction is a chance to leave a mark, whether it is through a kind word, a supportive gesture, or simply being present. We have the capacity to shape the world around us. Steve chose to shape his world with generosity and humor. He chose to build bridges rather than walls. And he chose to live in a way that left those around him better for having known him. Even in the darkest of circumstances, the truth serves as an anchor. The family's refusal to accept a false narrative, their insistence on seeking the cause of their beloved brother's death, allowed them to honor his memory. It was an act of love, a final service to the man who had served them so well throughout his life. There is a peace that comes with knowing the truth, even when that truth is painful. It allows for the process of healing to begin, however slowly. For the Clayton family, healing has meant keeping Steve's memory alive. It has meant celebrating the milestones he would have cherished, remembering the jokes he would have told, and honoring the values he held dear. As we reflect on this account, we are invited to consider the impact of our own lives. We are encouraged to cherish our relationships, to act with integrity, and to remain mindful of the people who walk beside us. We are reminded that the legacy we leave is found in the hearts of those we have touched, in the memories we have created, and in the love we have shared. Steve Clayton, the businessman who retired at 41 to dedicate his life to others, the brother who filled his family's milestones with joy, the man who sought a love that was pure and whole, continues to speak to us through the resonance of his life. He reminds us that the greatest measure of a man is not the wealth he accumulates or the accolades he receives, but the love he gives and the joy he inspires in others. In the end, the story of Steve Clayton is a reminder to embrace the light, to value the truth, and to hold tightly to the ones we love. It is a story that, despite its tragic turning point, remains a narrative of hope, as it teaches us the enduring power of family, the importance of integrity, and the beauty of a life well lived. The memory of Steve Clayton lives on, a guiding light that continues to shine in the lives of all who were fortunate enough to know him. The journey from the sunny shores of Miami to the peaceful banks of Lake Wylie was one defined by Steve's quest for a life of purpose. He had navigated the complexities of business with a sharp mind and a compassionate heart. He had navigated the nuances of family with a devotion that was unwavering. And even in his final days, he remained a testament to the strength of the human spirit. For those left behind, the path forward has been one of gradual reconstruction. They have learned to hold space of the sorrow, while simultaneously celebrating the joy that Steve brought into their lives. They have found strength in their collective memory and purpose in ensuring that his legacy is defined by his character rather than the actions of another. This account serves as a testament to that legacy. It is a tribute to a man who was, in every sense of the word, larger than life. It is an acknowledgement of the love that binds us and the truth that sets us free. As we close this narrative, we are left with the image of Steve Clayton as he truly was, a man of generous spirit, an infectious laugh, and enduring love for his family. He remains and will always remain a cherished part of their lives, a source of inspiration, and a reminder of the best that a human being can be. The world is a quieter place without the boisterous, gregarious energy of Steve Clayton, the laughter that once filled his home, the wisdom he shared with his mates, and the support he provided to his sisters are echoes that continue to resonate. He taught those around him how to live, how to give, and how to love, and though his physical presence is gone, the lessons he imparted continue to guide his loved ones as they navigate their own journeys. It is the hope of all who knew him that his story will serve as a beacon, reminding us to appreciate the time we have and the people who fill our days. It is a call to be present, to be kind, and to be brave in the face of life's uncertainties. Steve Clayton's life was a gift, and in sharing his story, we honor that gift. We recognize the beauty of his journey, the impact of his character, and the lasting legacy of his love. In the final analysis, what matters most is the love we leave behind. Steve Clayton left behind a reservoir of love that continues to sustain his family. He left behind a blueprint for living that continues to inspire his friends. He left behind a memory that continues to bring warmth to the hearts of all who remember him. And in doing so, he ensures that his influence will continue to be felt for generations to come. The chapters of his life, from the early days of childhood to the pinnacle of his career and fulfillment of his personal dreams, form a narrative that is rich in emotion and meaning. It is a story that, while marked by an unexpected and sorrowful conclusion, is fundamentally defined by the joy he created. It is a story that deserves to be remembered, a story that deserves to be shared, and a story that will forever occupy a special place in the hearts of those who loved him. We honor Steve Clayton not by dwelling on the darkness, but by celebrating the light. We honor him by continuing to nurture the relationships he valued, by continuing to pursue the passions he loved, and by continuing to embody the kindness he demonstrated daily. We honor him by living our own lives with the same commitment to joy, the same dedication to family, and the same spirit of generosity that defined his existence. The legacy of Steve Clayton is secure. It is written in the hearts of his sisters, who remember him as the brother who was always there. It is written in the lives of the young men he mentored, who carry his lessons of business and life forward. It is written in the memories of the children he played with, who remember him as the man who brought magic to every game. It is written in the fabric of the communities he touched, who were beneficiaries of his generous spirit. As we look back on the story of this successful, generous businessman, we are reminded of the profound impact a single individual can have. We are reminded that we are all connected, and that the choices we make, the love we share, and the integrity we demonstrate truly matter. Steve Clayton's life was an affirmation of these truths, and his memory continues to be a source of strength, comfort, and inspiration. May we all strive to live with such intent, to love with such depth, and to leave behind a legacy as enduring as his. May we remember Steve Clayton, not for the tragic end of his journey, but for the magnificent life he led along the way. May his story continue to serve as a reminder of the power of the